As the Charity Commission investigates the Captain Tom Moore Foundation, neighbours of theirs express fury at the construction of a spa and pool, saying they would smash it down with a sledgehammer. The foundation has been told they need to take down the building. Is this meaning that the shine is coming off that good man's legacy? Your fellow Brits voted the most uplifting moment of the last century were the achievements of Captain Sir Tom Moore, who walked 100 laps of his garden during lockdown and raised £38 million for the NHS. From that fundraising came TV shows and books, children dressed up as Captain Tom for World Book Day, a charitable organisation. The Captain Tom Moore Foundation was started in his name, and that seems to be where the problems began. The Charity Commission began a series of discussions with the foundation amid concerns about the way it was governed, which escalated into a full inquiry after fresh evidence emerged of potentially serious misconduct. Earlier this week, the foundation ceased taking donations after a local council ruled an unauthorised building in the home of Captain Tom's daughter had to be demolished. The building was put up with permission initially granted because it was going to be used, and I'm quoting here, in connection with the Captain Tom Foundation and its charitable objectives. They said the building was urgently needed, an L-shaped building in the grounds of their home, and it was urgently needed because it needed to be used for presentations and memorabilia. What they didn't get approval for, but built anyway, was a spa and pool, turning the L-shaped building into a C-shaped one and building it anyway without the necessary planning permission. They've been told now to take the building down, and neighbours of theirs are going nuts. One neighbour saying today that she would happily smash the building down with a sledgehammer. I think there's been quite a bit of anger about all this, and to be fair, the anger might be misplaced, because we don't know what the Charity Commission is going to say, and we don't know a great deal about the details of how the spa and pool attached to the meeting room and memorabilia area, paid for by the charity, was paid for. With what money was it paid for? So the anger might be misplaced, but I do wonder whether, given all of this, if people were asked again about the greatest moment of the last century, whether they would vote for Sir Tom's charity work again. Has the shine come off it, given events around another charity, the foundation, in his own name? And if you donated to that foundation, as it seems many people have, I wonder what you make of it. 10 minutes past 5. Joseph Kotrie Monson is director of Mary Monson Solicitors on Fleet Street, legal commentator specialising in financial and regulatory cases. Thank you very much indeed for coming on. What do you make of it?
I mean, I think we are we have a really interesting distinction to draw between what we might regard as either bad faith or bad optics on the one hand, Tom, and the legal context. And you're, of course, right. That Charity Commission investigation is ongoing. Findings have not been made. Of course, it's a statutory investigation, which it means that it has passed the first grade of consideration when complaints are made and is being treated seriously. But as far as that organisation is concerned, and don't forget, Hannah Ingram is a trustee, but is not the entity, not the charity itself. And there are independent trustees who have been making statements distancing themselves from this application. Yes, it was a partially retrospective planning application made in 2022, following on from an earlier one the previous year. There's been a demolition notice since, and it's subject, but that itself, Tom, is subject to an appeal. And of course, there was that terrible clangor of a sentence in that document, the space being urgently needed for presentations and memorabilia of the Captain Tom Foundation. Halfway between those two dates is when the Charity Commission investigation begins in January 2022, and that's the point at which there should have been clearly absolute kid gloves in terms of any use of the name, because that investigation centres around what lawyers call related parties. So it's when there are other people within an organisation or its structure who can benefit for another purpose. For example, in this case, the business owned by the family or members of the family who provided over £100,000 in marketing services. But again, the planning application was not made in the name of Captain Tom, more of a name drop. But those independent trustees don't appear to have been aware of it and have distanced distanced themselves from it.
You mentioned the £100,000 in marketing. Just to come back to that very quickly, that was, am I right in saying that was £100,000 spent by the foundation on marketing services gained through the family business that dealt in marketing anyway?
Absolutely. And given the numbers going through, millions of pounds being raised, tens of millions, in fact, it may well be that represented value for money.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that the people deciding to spend that money on behalf of the foundation should be the same people gaining from it. There should be a ring fencing, and there wasn't. And it could, of course, be down to kind of first-time charity members not necessarily knowing what they're doing and accepting guidance. And that's one of the main purposes that the commission exists, is to provide guidance rather than just regulation and enforcement. Having said that, there is that sense of the commercialization of Captain Tom's name. We've had 4 books. There's an apparent upcoming film of his life. Tom, there's even a special Captain Tom gin that's apparently in the offing, and the whole thing, doesn't it create something of an unfortunate impression? This is something you've opened this piece by talking about the special space in our hearts that this charity and the actions of the heroic captain, later Colonel Tom, occupied. Something along the lines of St. Tiggy Winkle's or Battersea Dogs Home is probably the type of fondness that the foundation should have for us. It's all a bit more like Peckham Springwater and Trotter's Independent Traders, I'm afraid, in terms of the public perception. But that's not to say necessarily they've done anything wrong. This is a planning case and a charity investigation, a commission investigation into whether there have been breaches. Nobody's talked about theft. Nobody's talked about misappropriation. The sad aftermath is that the foundation, as you point out, announced at the beginning of this week, clearly or apparently as a result of the bad publicity, has said it will stop taking donations. And that can't have been what anybody foresaw at the beginning of this remarkable chapter in our recent history.
Very good to speak to you. Joseph Kotrie Monson, Director of Mary Monson Solicitors on Fleet Street, legal commentator specialising in financial and regulatory cases. He's right, isn't he? I mean, what happened during lockdown and the money that was raised for the NHS by this act from this great man of walking around the garden, the place it holds in people's heart, clearly a very, very strong place in people's hearts, given it was voted as the most heartwarming thing of the last century. The spin-offs, the books, the gins, the films, what do you make of it? I mean, it adds to a sense, and we've got to be very careful here because there's an investigation and there's no suggestion that anyone has done anything wrong, but it adds to a sense of the commercialising of what was a nice moment, a good bit of fundraising. I'd be very keen to speak to you if you've donated to the foundation, the Captain Tom Moore Foundation, and what you make of it, given that you've offered your money to them.